Hi everyone, it's Ryan here. Welcome to my room. Hope you're well today, guys. Today we're going to be discussing a slightly more adult topic, I suppose, which is the topic of sexuality, sex of the body in relation to INFJs. I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, this is not like I'm not like a sex education teacher or anything like that. I probably, as an INFJ, encounter challenges and situations that will be encountered by many INFJs, I'm sure. So this is more so an attempt, to do some exploring on that topic, because I feel like it's not, as you probably already know, most videos on the internet about INFJs or on topics on Reddit or articles online, they're much more likely to be about the spirit, the old soul of the INFJ, the intellectual side of the INFJ, the INFJ in relation to others, the harmonization tendencies of the INFJ, a lot less likely to be about the sex and the INFJ, or sexuality and the INFJ, which is precisely why I think it's an important topic to discuss, because, sexuality is part of our lives, isn't it? So let's see what we can say before I move on. Don't forget that you can check out my books, right? The two most recent books, last couple of years. Best-selling book on the INFJ, The Ecstatic Soul, check it out, less than $10. Check all 95 reviews and see what you think. And my new novel, The Infinite Castle, also some reviews on Amazon, less than $10 as well. If you're into Kafka, Dostoevsky, Murakami, existentialism, post-existentialism, postmodernism, and if you like the idea of a main character, a protagonist that is likely a bit of a tortured INFJ, this might be for you. So, and that supports me massively. You can also support me and the channel to keep it going by being Patreon supporters, anywhere from $3 a month. Thank you so much to my current supporters. It helps massively. I can never stress that enough. So thank you, and consider it, please. So INFJs and sexuality. Like I was saying previously, it's not a topic that is discussed a lot. I mean, I have no doubt that if you do a search online, like on YouTube or on Google, you'll find some stuff. So I'm not claiming that I'm the first person to actually discuss this topic, but first things first, even if you do like a back search on my own catalog of videos, and there's like hundreds of videos that I started making in 2018, so it's been like 5 years or something, there's probably very few that are about this topic versus like philosophy stuff, psychology stuff, spirituality stuff, relationship stuff, because it's interesting, right? You can make a lot of videos about INFJs and relationships and watch a lot of videos about INFJs and relationships, but whether those videos or not will incorporate the strong elements of sexuality in those relationships, which is an important aspect of relationships, as we all know. There's a reason why we are in relationships, why we have children, so on and so forth. Probably not very often the topic that is explored in with the deepest level of precision or extension, and that's partly why I wanted to kind of open up this discussion, because I feel like what I can share, is based on my own experience, of course, but it has to be limited by the notion of something that comes in conflict a little bit with attempts to discuss this topic, which is the limitless privacy of INFJs. INFJs is quite private. Even INFJs with well-developed FE, the INFJs with well-developed FE that can come across as the NFJs in certain situations. One of the ways in which they're not the NFJs is that they will remain perennially private about themselves. They have a way of being very outgoing for those who have, again, very strong FE, more extroverted than the average INFJ, but, come the end of conversation, or at the end of the week, at the end of the month, you realize how much they actually share about themselves, unless really prompted by me. That is their interlocutor, and there's not that much. In fact, during my wedding, the little thing I'll share with you is that it's something that quite surprised me, but my best man, who is not an INFJ himself, he's most likely, I should know, he's my best friend, but at this point, I think he's somewhere between the NTP and INTP, not quite sure which one, but he joked about just how I'm actually quite private, despite making videos and coming across at least extroverted in certain situations. So it was interesting. Part of his speech was about that, and it seemed that people agreed. So obviously it complicates things a bit. There's also a lot of people that I've observed, mostly online, but that's interesting because people share things. And so that is the basis of what I can discuss. So my impression is that there's no doubt INFJs when it comes to sexuality, when it comes to discussing sexuality, are quite private. You could argue that everyone is private about sexuality, but I think you will quickly agree that that's not quite true, that certainly there are types of people that are more likely to be more open, sometimes too open, more open than we would like about their sexual life. And but that's not the case of the INFJ. It's an interesting question whether that type of person that is very open about their sexual life, sometimes maybe too much for our liking, it's an interesting question whether that tends to align with a certain type of personality as defined by Jung. No doubt more of an extroverted type. And I would probably argue more likely to be an extroverted type with SE in their function stack, right? Because SE has a relationship with the body which is undeniable and which is probably stronger than any other function. And in fact, the funny thing is that in the Ecstatic Soul, for those who have read it, there is a chapter called, you'll see this here, The Body Recovered. It sounds scrumptious, sounds titillating, but in fact very intellectual, is what people have said. Doesn't mean it's not insightful, I hope it is, but it is an idea of saying that INFJs are alienated from their own embodiment through being SE inferior by and large, but they can recover their sense of embodiment through FE, because a way of reconnecting with an extroverted function that's higher up in your stack, which you can have more control over, allows you automatically almost to reconnect with the lower extroverted function in your stack, which is SE. So FE in a way is the way back to the body, paradoxically. At least that's one of the arguments of the book. But that's, again, in some sense, someone who's high in SE might argue, well, that still amounts to a form of SE devaluation. So on the one hand, you have a lot of INFJs who are not likely to value SE. That might have to do with their self-portrayal, their self-understanding as an I-dominance. Nothing too surprising about that. You probably would encounter a lot of INFPs and ISFPs who devalue TE a great deal. That's quite common. Or, ENFJs who devalue TI, INTPs who devalue FE, and so on. But one of the consequences of this is that for an INFJ, if you like, there's, on the one hand, there's the privacy. They don't like to talk about their sexuality. But on the other hand, there's also a sense of, it's not just that they don't like to talk about their sexuality because they're private people, but it's almost something along the lines of, if our self-understanding is so spiritual, how do we reconcile this with having a sexuality that is blooming, blossoming, open, and thriving? Because that all has to do with the body. And it is true that you have this certain type of person for whom like a sexual experience has a deep spiritual signification. And perhaps that is one way for the INFJ to self-understand themselves in terms of sexual beings, is to kind of keep the spiritual aspect as part of the whole prism. But you can never still, you cannot deny that at the end of the day, sexuality does involve the body in a big way. I've encountered lots of different types. INFJs that seem almost sexless, either because they're super academic or they're pure perception types. INFJs that refer to sexuality either through like a deep spiritual lens or through the lens of religion. So really more through the lens of, if it's through the lens of religion, through the lens of maybe having an offspring, having a descendants, reproduction for the sake of God, for instance. So it's not seen as something that is for pleasure. The idea of pleasure in sexuality is not something that comes across in these people, but at least they do mention sexuality compared to the sexless angel type beings or souls that you encounter online that seem often to be the pure perception INFJs. And then there is another type, and I don't know if it belongs to the proactive INFJ or what, but at least it's certainly a type of INFJ that seems to be higher in extroverted functions than your, typical INFJs, who seem very comfortable with their sexuality. You'll notice that not in public, because INFJs are private, but more so maybe in private conversations, where they like to talk about their sexuality, sexual experiences, and about high sex drive, high libido, and just to be very overtly sensual and sexual, at least with another person, either their significant other, I mean, certainly their significant other, but if they don't have a significant other, with their confidant, someone, a friend that they trust, you know, and that they like to talk about some of that stuff. And I have been in that position as a confidant, and I've really noticed that now on the part of women more so, just because I'm a man, and it's not so common, maybe for unrelated reasons, for men to talk about sexuality. Maybe that's a problem, you know, maybe that's something that men should do more between themselves, but it's something that, apart from bragging about our sexuality or sexual exploits that are often made up, we're not very good at it. And women are probably a lot better at it. But suffice it to say that there is still this category of person that I've encountered, and I don't know what is it? Is it like really just a matter of how extroverted they are, or how they were brought up, in the kind of family they were brought up, or, you know, and the culture that they were brought up in. Because, for example, it seems to me that like the Scandinavian INFJs that I've come across have been tended to be a lot more liberated about their sexuality. And it is known that in Scandinavia, in Scandinavian countries or Nordic countries, because Finland would be included in that as well, people seem to be more comfortable with nakedness, with sexual pleasure, with sexuality. So that could, you know, and probably could include Iceland as well, because I have an example of an Icelandic person who was very clearly INFJ, but also very open and very freed, you know. But I don't quite know, and I would be curious to know where you fall. I remain private, so I will not tell you exactly where I fall, but certainly not in the super extravagantly open. That's not the case, certainly not. But certainly more of the more private kinds, and with probably some religious dimension that matters as well. But more than that, you know, more than that, certainly. And we all learn all the time, don't we? You know, it's part of an ongoing conversation with your partner, especially. But I'm really curious to hear more about your position and where you identify and your relationship with this topic. If you're comfortable to share, obviously you can keep it in general terms. You don't have to open up, but if you feel like opening up, you can also do that. It's a safe space. So let me know in the comments, guys. I look forward to hearing your feedback on this video and this topic. And don't forget that you can support me on Patreon. Massively helps me. All right. See you next week, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.